to my fellow Africans on the continent and around the globe, happy Africa Day. On this day, May 25th, 1963, our Pan-African fathers got together precisely to undo the damage that was done to our continent by the Berlin Conference. Sadly, when they went to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, they were divided. We had the Casablanca group, who were Ghana, Guinea, Mali, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. The other group were the Monrovia group, who were the majority. The Pan-African group said, Africa for the Africans and African Union now. They were the Casablanca group. It was during this formative meeting that Kwame Nkrumah proclaimed that Africa was for the Africans and African Union now. He also proclaimed you are not African because you were born in Africa, but rather you are African because Africa is born in you. On this day, as we celebrate Africa Day, my question to all of you is Africa born in you? Are you prepared to complete the unfinished business of our Pan-African fathers? The issue of an Africa speaking with one voice is an issue that has been on the table for over 56 years. When our Pan-African fathers failed to meet a consensus in 1963, they came up with a compromise and created the Organization of African Unity. Year in and year out, our Pan-African fathers met and discussed the issue of an Africa speaking with one voice. And year in and year out, for 56 years, they failed to reach a consensus. Fortunately, finally, in 2018, our leaders came together, and once again, this time, they were able to reach a consensus and came up with a decision which they are now calling the African Continental Free Trade Area. This is a decision that is saying Africa must become a powerhouse, that Africa must become the giant that Africa has always been. Let's remember that prior to the settlers, prior to the colonizers coming to the continent, civilization as we know it began in Africa. Africa was the powerhouse. Africa was the giant that ruled the world. Somewhere along the way, we lost our place. And that place that we should claim as the leader of the world, as the origin of humanity as we know it, we must reclaim that place. Today is a day for us to reflect on those key points and remind ourselves as Africans, as Black people, are we prepared to unite and take our Africa to a rightful place on the world stage? Our Pan-African fathers started the journey. It is their shoulders that we are standing on. We have a responsibility to finish the unfinished business that they started. But in order for us to finish the journey that they began, we first and foremost must understand ourselves. As Black people, we have been put to sleep for far too long. As Black people, we have been brainwashed systematically, starting with slavery, followed by colonization. It is important that we understand our history. It is important that we understand that which has been done to us. It is important that we are surrounded by subliminal messages that depict Blackness as being undesirable and ugly. It is that which precisely keeps us Black people feeling inferior. It keeps us from going to the boardroom tables with the right frame of mind. A frame of mind that says Africa first, just like other countries do. But it is precisely because we are suffering from the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization that we continue to struggle 136 years after the Berlin Conference. Africa is still divided now with 55 little-bitty countries, economies that clearly cannot survive on their own. Why has it taken us so long to accomplish what seems to be a simple task of simply saying Africa can only gain a rightful place when we are united? But the Berlin Conference did a good job of making sure that we will forever be chasing our tails. Today, as we celebrate Africa Day, may I remind all of you that for Africa to move forward, for Africa to be integrated, for the children of Africa to come together and speak with one voice, it starts with the mind. Our minds are in the intensive care when it comes to the healing that we need as Black people. The self-hate and mistrust of each other is keeping us from moving forward. It's going to take each and every one of us making a personal commitment to say, I shall believe in myself, and I will believe in my brother and my sister. And I do not care whether my brother or my sister believes in me. My responsibility ends with me. And I will look into my brother's eyes. I will look into my sister's eyes and say, my brother, my sister, I believe in you. And should you disappoint me, it is on you. Brothers and sisters on the continent and around the globe, today is a day to reflect. Today is a day to ask each and every one of us to have a serious conversation in the mirror and ask yourself these very important questions. Am I colonized? Am I suffering from the legacy of slavery? And if so, how do I go through the journey of healing? Understand as a race, understand as a continent, we have been riding somebody else's train. We are part of somebody else's agenda. Africa demands her own agenda. We must get off of somebody else's train and jump into our own train that is going in the direction that's going to take us from the valley onto the mountaintop. We have been in the valley for far too long. How bad do things have to get before we can say enough is enough? How much exploitation of our continent must go on before we can say enough is enough? How many children must die? How many women must die? How many young people must roam around unemployed before we can say enough is enough? You see, ours is a position of righteousness. We are the victims, and all we have to do is stand up and look the abusers, the perpetrators in the eye and say enough is enough. No more shall they continue to exploit us. No more shall they continue to steal from Africa in broad daylight. And no more shall we turn another cheek. Because this time is going to be different. This time, it must be different. Africa must rise up. Africa must make a commitment to take Africa to her previous glory. Because Africa has everything Africa needs to be the leader of the new world. We've got all the natural resources we need. Africa is the place where the rest of the world is looking to for their needs. The only ingredient that is missing for Africa to take her rightful place on the world stage are her children in the diaspora. So once again, I'm asking my fellow African diaspora to again begin to understand why it is important for you to come together and unite. Unite just like the rest of the other races have done. Living in this beautiful country of the United States, we're surrounded by examples of how other races have united, how they put their differences aside when it comes to their countries of origin. In our case, our differences, we must set them aside when it comes to Africa. When we have a prosperous and peaceful Africa, that equates to a respected Africans, not only on the continent, but around the globe. So you have a responsibility, each and every one of us. Not only must we do it for ourselves, but we must also do it for our children, grandchildren, and generations to come. So as we celebrate Africa Day today, let's make a commitment that the decision that was reached upon by our African heads of states, the African Continental Free Trade Area, must be a success. It is our only hope of seeing an Africa that is united, an Africa that is integrated, an Africa that is peaceful and prosperous, speaking with one voice, and an Africa that will occupy her rightful place on the world stage. African Continental Free Trade Area must be supported. Implementation is supposed to begin in January of 2021. I hope we all will make a commitment to support this very important, monumental decision, the decision that has been long awaited, the decision that is going to be our only hope if we are to ever complete the unfinished business that our Pan-African fathers started in 1963. I hope wherever our Pan-African fathers are, they can look upon us today and continue to smile, knowing that we have not forgotten, that we will continue to pick up where they left, that the job that they started will be completed. And the African Continental Free Trade Area is the answer. So let's all make a commitment to support the African Continental Free Trade Area. Let's all make a commitment to put our differences aside and commit to speaking with one voice.